So locations, most states, they're all set up a little bit differently, but most states require that you have a location as part of your submission. And so in different states, there are different communities within, so there's different towns and cities and even areas within those towns and cities that are able to support cannabis businesses in different ways. And most regulatory bodies require some sort of a host community agreement to be signed and submitted as part of the application process. And sometimes finding that location can be one of the biggest hurdles in your process, which is why working with a real estate agent or broker who understands what your needs are going to be and knows the communities that are looking for whatever type of licensing that you're looking for. So some rural communities are okay or glad to have cultivation in their communities, and some are not. So you're going to want to know and be working with a professional that can help you find a good location for you that is, you're going to want to be in a location where you can be one of the primary licensees in that area, so that there's not a lot of overlap with other licensed operators, and that the community is okay with you being there, and those types of things. The host community agreement's primary purpose is to provide a mutually beneficial relationship with the community. There's lots of thoughts on that. But ultimately that is what it's for. And you do want to be in good standing with the community where you want to be. They're often required, as I've already said, as part of the approval process. And usually you don't want to own real estate in your cannabis entity that owns the licensing. There are lots of cannabis operators that have separate real estate arms where they own some of their real estate, but that's in a separate entity. So owning real estate in your license holding entity is generally not a good idea. You can talk to your other professionals about that, but owning it as a separate arm sometimes can give you some leverage in your lease agreements. So many of the lease agreements that we've seen have provisions for rent escalations over time. Usually they start out with a pre-licensing cost so that it gives you time to do your build out and get your application and your site completely approved. And then the rent, once you become operational, usually, or in the second year, the rent starts to escalate from that point forward. So doing some proper prior planning around whether or not your business is actually going to support these lease payments ahead of time is super helpful. And a good thing to really be thinking about. You want to take your forecasts and you want to be conservative, and if your most conservative forecast on what you're going to do for revenue allows you to easily, pay those lease payments, even with the escalations, then you're in a better spot than if it's going to be tight ahead of time. So some of the other reasons why you generally don't want to have real estate in a cannabis business license is, for financing reasons, for risk of license forfeiture, tax considerations, and overall flexibility. So some things to keep in mind while you're thinking about, do I want to own? Do I want to lease? Or do I want to? The other thing is sometimes investors don't want to invest in the cannabis license entity, but will invest in your real estate. So that's something else to think about. Sometimes investors are more interested in investing in some of the ancillary businesses or other entities that are not the cannabis license holding entity. So we talked a little bit about why your location matters. I mean, you definitely want to be in a community that wants you there. It is much easier to get through this process with a good host community agreement. And you want to make sure that you're in a location that you feel comfortable about from a revenue production point of view. And you want to be in a location that you feel like you can make your lease payments.